Thank you for appearing today. My question is fairly simple. It is illegal to pay men and women differently because of their sex in Australia, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. How long has that been the case?
I guess since the 60s.
It's the late 60s.
Yeah,
late 60s. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Is the data you publish on comparing male pay versus female pay on a like-for-like job basis?
No, Senator, it very clearly is not, and it doesn't intend to be.
So you could, for example, publish airline employees, and majority of pilots are men at the moment. Women are increasing, and a majority of hostesses are female, so it would show a skew towards the men because pilots are paid more than hostesses.
That's absolutely right. That is the gender pay gap.
That's the point.
How is that the point?
That's what the gender pay gap calculates. It is not seeking to calculate a like-for-like comparison. The definition is, and let's say we're doing an average gender pay gap, it's the average salaries of all men and the average salaries of all women and a comparison between the two. That is the simple, clear definition of the gender pay gap.
Isn't that it's not on a like-for-like basis? It doesn't accommodate hours because men tend to work more hours and men tend to be in more dangerous jobs generally.
So our calculation seeks to allow for, it annualises part-time or part-year earnings to an annualised full-time equivalent basis so that it does account and allow for the differences and make a fair comparison for people who are working non-full-time versus full-time.
Sure.
But that's very clear. But it is not a like-for-like comparison, and it doesn't seek to make that comparison.
Isn't it then misleading?
Not when the definition of what we're calculating is very clear. We're very clear on what the gender pay gap seeks to calculate. And as I said earlier, it's not a perfect measure. It's a proxy for gender equality. And with the clarity of what the definition is, then people can understand what the percentage reflects.
So if a male pilot and a female pilot had the similar experience, number of years, similar qualifications, they'd be paid the same. They'd have to be.
Well, certainly that's the law and our expectation. I'm sure the government's expectation is that companies do fulfil that requirement of equal pay for equal work because it's been the law for more than 50 years.
So where's the gender pay gap?
The gender pay gap is driven by a combination of the composition of the workforce and the relativities of those pay for that composition.
But isn't it erroneous to say that women are paid less than men? There's a gender pay gap. If, in fact, for equivalent jobs, like-for-like basis, hours worked, they're paid the same.
So what we're very clear in our communications is that we will say women are paid less on average than men in an employer, in an industry, in an occupation when we describe the gender pay gap.
So I've been to some pretty advanced statistics classes, but you don't have to do that to realise that averages can hide a lot. Averages can misinform and mislead.
Absolutely, Senator. So once again, the gender pay gap is a proxy that commences a conversation about what's driving those differences. And we talked earlier with Senator Hume about the employer statement gives employers a mechanism by which they can then say what is driving the differences in their composition or in their pay and remuneration rates and what things they're undertaking to address those differences.
So you're trying to drive more female pilots and more male hostesses?
I thought, and I usually don't comment on individual companies, but Qantas, after the publishing of the gender pay gaps, did announce a policy to attract more pilots into their ranks as a reflection of those very high-paying roles being currently very male-dominated.
So the gender pay gap name and shame list that you publish doesn't account for the amount of hours actually worked or overtime, does it?
As I've said, Senator, it is what we published was the median salary for women and the median salary for men, or total remuneration and base salary. We did two calculations and the percent differences between the two. And so that was the data that was published for each employer.
And it's not a name and shame list. It's the data that's available to WGEA. People choose to use it how they choose to use it, but it's information that we believe is important to support the work that's being done to narrow the gender pay gap in the country.
So it's really a tool to use to push an agenda.
Senator, it's an internationally...
AGENDA, not agenda.
It's an internationally used measure around the world. It's, as I said, the UK government 6 years ago started publishing gender pay gaps of their employers using a similar methodology. It's one that's been used in Australia for the last 15, 20 years in terms of its calculation. It's a reflection of the relationship between what men and women earn and their responsibilities in the workforce.
Well, it would only be that, a reflection of what men and women earn and their responsibilities, if it was like for like, and it's not like for like, it's misleading.
I suppose I don't agree with that, Senator. The calculation is very clear, the methodology used for the calculation, and we're very clear that it doesn't seek to do a like-for-like. In fact, one thing that we're very pleased about is the conversation has moved from a like-for-like comparison, because that is the law and it has been the law for 50 years and companies should be complying with the law, to actually get to the differences about what are the structural inequalities that are driving the fact that we have a gender pay gap as calculated, as described, across both the nation and in every industry across Australia.
Do we have a gender pay gap, which implies that we're paying women less than men for the same job, or do we have a gap in skills and preferences for work?
I mean, well, women workers do earn less on average than men, the male workers.
Not like for like in Australia.
Well, nobody other than you is suggesting that we are measuring like for like. Nobody is. Ms Wooldridge and I, when we do media on this, make it very clear what the gender pay gap consists of. Nobody is saying that equal pay is not being offered to women, although, you know, in some cases we've got rid of pay secrecy clauses and some of the other arrangements that did, I think, disadvantage women in that regard. This is about giving a snapshot in industries, in business, about what is actually happening with their workforce. And, you know, the facts are the facts. And yes, we are pushing an agenda. The agenda is to make sure that women get the same opportunities as men through the work that they do, including dealing with the very gender segregated nature of our labour force.
Okay. Are you concerned that if you actually publish real comparable data about how much men and women are working the same job at the same company get paid, it would show there's no gender pay gap because it's illegal and there'd be no need for your agency, so you'd be wound down? I'm serious.
No.
Nothing would give Mary more pleasure.
Not the slightest bit concerned about that. And in fact, what companies say to us is that they do work hard on the like-for-like pay, and they have to remain vigilant each and every year because discrepancies arise. It's not a set and forget, and they do work hard on it, and that's absolutely fundamental. And it's a component of the gender pay gap, but it's not the whole gender pay gap. And so we need to look beyond like-for-like pay to understand what else is driving the inequalities that mean, on average, men and women have a 21.7% differential in their average total remuneration.
Right, so give me a hand here. You'd agree that men and women are not the same, and that their differences are things to cherish. Because if you're a company that employs only men, you're missing out on the talents of women. So it would be, isn't it better to say, rather than distort the figures, isn't it better to say to somehow encourage companies to employ women for the same job?
Well, nobody's distorting the figures. The figures are the information that's provided by the employer to WGEA, which WGEA then publish. So nobody's distorting figures. And I think employers on the whole, including some I've spoken to since their data's been published, are interested in this because they see the benefits that come from a more gender-balanced workforce, for sure. But, you know, we're also dealing with, I think, a lot of history here, a lot of choices that are made about what jobs suit what gender. There's a whole range of things going on here that WGEA's publication of this information supports further action on, so that we are able to deal with, you know, the different components that lead to the gender pay gap in the country.
Okay. Thank you. What's the gender breakdown of your workforce, your agency?
So we're at the moment 78% women, 22% men, and we continue to seek to improve that balance in our recruitment processes.
So you're familiar with the gender gap, the gender pay gap. Why is it so difficult, Minister, for men's groups and shelters? This is not to do with welfare payments or mental health and such, but why is it so difficult for men's groups and shelters to get support for mental health for men? Men are stigmatised in that field.
In the area of mental health?
Mental health, support, shelters. It's almost impossible to get money to
a question that we can deal with in health when we get there, because they would be the providers. I absolutely agree that responses for mental health and support for mental health needs to be targeted to particular demographics, you know, and men, you know, certainly experience mental health concerns, you know, at very high levels, you know. So I think there are targeted supports and interventions that are tailored to men, but health would be the more, the obvious area for that.
I'll be asking you health in other places. It's just that I know men's groups find it very, very difficult to get support, whereas women's groups find it very easy to get support.
I do need to.
Well, I think both women and men's groups would argue that they are after more support. We've been going through that with Senator Waters this morning.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.